Loud. Hello. Hello. Welcome, everyone. It is indeed my pleasure and privilege to welcome you all on behalf of Women's Health and Education Center. Its acronym is WHEC. We have a very thought-provoking online seminar for you in this side event. I'm sure you will find the projects and opinions of the speakers helpful to you for your projects and mission. We are grateful to High Level Political Forum for granting us this opportunity and sharing our thoughts with you. This acronym, WHEC, may not be very familiar to you today, but trust me, someday it will be your favorite. Our services are available and accessible in 227 countries and territories via WHEC Global Health Line. It is ready for various forms of collaborations. I am sure we can plan and develop many common projects and programs and advance our common agenda. Let's start working together. Okay, let me get my slides here. I think they're gone somewhere. Okay, have patience. I had opened it, but okay. Screen share. Share. Okay, can you all see that? I will start its view.
Yes, Rita, we can
Yes,
see.
yes.
Perfect.
We are presenting a new initiative with a special focus on SDGs 3, 4, and 5. And those who are not very familiar with SDG numbers, the missions of SDG number 3 is good health and well-being, SDG 4, quality education, SDG 5, gender equality. We propose a fellowship program in international health and development with a special focus on healthcare providers worldwide. Objectives to transform education and health systems, develop collaborative approaches, and support inclusive methods. Number 2, to help prepare the next generation to innovate solutions for addressing social and economic challenges, to build a more sustainable future. Number 3, to build a more sustainable future, which is very important to all of us. Quality education and quantity of good healthcare services are fundamental human rights. It is a prerequisite for many long-term opportunities and can serve as a societal equalizer. At the same time, progress in this area has been lagging. Why? We all want better future for ourselves, for our families, and for our communities. Let us ask ourselves, what are the new roles of functions of our teachers, our healthcare professionals, and trainers in education sector and health sector? In skill development, which are needed for global governance in the future. How best to implement digital skills and development strategies, where this is a global platform and this is a global initiative. We are everywhere so that you can be anywhere you want to be. Even before the pandemic, the world was not on track to achieve sustainable developmental goal by 2030 for school enrollments, literacy programs, providing healthcare services to its people. This pandemic has been the single largest disruption to education services and healthcare services. The World Bank estimates that students currently in school stand to lose a cumulative of $17 trillion in lost labor earnings over their lifetime due to school closures. Some estimates suggest that COVID-19 has wiped out 20 years of gains with SDGs 3, 4, 5. Many children also suffer from mental health issues due to increasing isolation. These negative impacts have disproportionately affected vulnerable communities, including developing countries, low-income households, women, girls, persons with disabilities, migrants, and refugees. Let us get started. Hope in Africa. There are 50 countries listed as least developed countries, LDCs, by the United Nations Development Program, UNDP. About 45 of these countries are in the continent of Africa. Women's Health and Education Centers promises we will provide educational and health services free to LDCs. Join this movement. Why should we learn about SDGs? How can we help the world become a better place to live for everyone? The world is a very big place, and there are huge number of things that we all can do to make it happen. Even more incredible place to live for all of us. But sometimes having so many options can be overwhelming. There may be ways that you can help that you never thought about before. When you are feeling hopeful but lost, we hope our suggestions and our projects can help you guide you in improving our planet and society as a whole. No disrespect to big thinkers, big leaders, thought provokers, and game changers, but we think if we aim too high, we might miss the point completely. Baby steps, small changes, daily moments of kindness, little things. These are the things that matter. Step 1, improving locally, improving at home, improving globally. Be sincere. Slide 6. Here is the brief history of this initiative, and it's a story of our journey. In collaboration with the Department of Public Information, DPI, of the United Nations and the WHO, this e-health platform was launched on 24th October 2002 for healthcare providers for exchanging their experiences, research, and to disseminate evidence-based reproductive health information with the world. In 2006, WHEC began developing scientifically based practice guidelines, practice bulletins. The guidelines are derived from the best available evidence-based, published in literature, the information, its clinical efficiency, and consideration cost for recommendations, and clearly linked to the evidence. These evidence-based practice guidelines are intended to be a means of improving the quality of healthcare, decreasing its cost, and diminishing professional liability. They are prospective in nature, therefore directive in approach. Our physicians board identifies, evaluates, and synthesizes the evidence-based information from the medical literature to produce these practice guidelines. It is provided to serve as a readily available introduction to an overview of the topic. In 2013, WHEC Global Health Line was launched in collaboration with Division of Reproductive Health Research, RHR, of WHO on July 4th, 2013. This Global Health Line is an internet-facing collaboration platform hosted by WHEC in the United States of America, USA. Further information can be accessed via the web link posted on womenshealthsection.com. In 2018, it was indeed my privilege and honor to present our Link Access project in 2018 HLPF session on the invitation of UNITAR. LINK is an acronym, Learning, Innovating, Networking for Knowledge. It was very well received by the audience. This link, web link, also can be easily accessed from womenshealthsection.com. As governments transition towards e-government and e-health throughout the world, there is a growing acknowledgement of the role for future planning and development that e-government and e-health could play an important role to harness information and technologies, telecommunication technologies, ICTs. My pleasure to submit to you all our suggestions and recommendations written in UN document E/CN.5/2021/NGO/38, published by 59th Commission of Social Development, CSOCD, also available from womenshealthsection.com, titled Role of Digital Technologies on Social Development and Well-Being of All. Our purpose is preparing the next generation of healthcare providers in international arena, deepening their knowledge and improving skill set for career in global health and global governance is urgently needed. Programs are needed for healthcare providers to provide them with academic training and practical knowledge to assist them in providing national and international health and healthcare. We have the knowledge, means, and motivation to act. Let us not wait a moment longer. All over the world, we all provide educational and healthcare services to multicultural societies. By interacting with different cultures, customs, and needs of our communities, we will develop respect for the diversity and embrace it. Yes, this is our shared responsibility, and it is our shared duty. Whole of government and whole of society approaches are needed, must be taken to address poverty, homelessness, and hunger. Education improves health, while health improves learning potential. Education and health complement, enhance, and support each other. Together, they serve as the foundation for a better work. I am grateful to the editors from the UN Chronicle who worked with me in 2007 on this article and published this as a lead paper for Millennium Development Goal MDGs number 5. Thanks again. The big question, why do we need improved collaboration between education sector and health sector? Simple answer. None of us live in healthcare system, rich and poor, nobody. We all live in our homes with our families and in our communities. If we consider what it takes to create health, the school becomes an ideal setting for action. Schools can help young people acquire the basic skills needed to create health. These so-called life skills include decision-making, problem-solving, critical thinking, communication, self-assessment, and coping strategies. When schools are health promoting, a major improvement is anticipated in the mental health status of our children and the adults they will become tomorrow. We all wish and want simple solution or magic to solve our complex problems of our today's world. There is no technical or political approach, no matter how well intended, has ever conquered this enormous challenge: education for all and health for all. Join the movement, join the efforts, and share your experiences. We welcome everyone. Thanks to UN Chronicle for giving me this beautiful photograph as a gift. Women die in the prime of life during the pregnancy and childbirth. About 500,000 women still in 2022. And 90% of these tragedies are in LDCs. Maternal mortality is not an academic subject of numbers and words. It is about people in deep distress. Women should be provided with access to community-based maternity services during pregnancy, as well as during and after delivery. Immediate and effective professional care during and after labor and delivery can make a life and death differences for mothers and their newborn children. The need for an urgent global coordinated response has prompted several agencies and international organizations to join forces and create partnerships for maternal, newborn, and child health. Women's Health and Education Center does not and will never decline educational and healthcare services to anyone. These continuing medical education initiatives in maternal and child health has potential to strengthen and reflect sustained high-level political involvement and can support the scale-up of programs within and across sectors. Join our efforts, join our services, and join our vision. Thank you very much. Now, I stop share here. Oh, good. Technology is charming when it works, Anshu. Okay, now it's, thank you, Dr. Banerjee, for joining us from WHO. I'm glad you are having a pleasant trip in India. That's a magical country. It is indeed my pleasure and privilege to give floor to Dr. Anshu Banerjee, distinguished faculty from WHO. Go ahead, floor is yours, all yours, sir.
Thank you very much. And Dr. Susanne Jacob, the WHO Deputy Director General, is unable to join us tonight. And Dr. Jacob sends her regrets to the organizers and to you, Rita. And is looking forward to another...
Tell her next time.
Yeah. Indeed, we will. And is looking forward to another occasion, indeed, to join. I will read out her remarks on her behalf. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I would like to start by thanking the organizers, the Women's Health and Education Center, for inviting us to this important event and for bringing together international organizations and national actors to cross the boundaries between national education systems and healthcare policies towards more integrated and coordinated support to address modern era challenges. What are these challenges, and consequently, what are the critical skills that our children will need in the 21st century? Powerful forces are shaping the health of our children in this millennium, and I would like to highlight 5. First, delays in social transitions, such as marriage and employment, have profound implications for mental, sexual, and reproductive health and well-being. Second, changes in global food systems due to climate change, urbanization, and globalization create new conditions for the epidemic of obesity amongst children and adolescents. Third, increased collective violence and armed conflict in some parts of the world inflict tremendous harm on adolescent mental health. Fourth, while greater connectivity offers tremendous opportunities for social activism and education, screen media exposure is also associated with obesity in children and adolescents that is mediated by insufficient physical activity, poor sleep quality, and increased calorie intake. Fifth, increased motorization without adequate road safety infrastructure puts millions of adolescents in low and middle income countries at risk of death from road traffic injuries. The World Health Organization works tirelessly to make sure that these trends and their impacts on children and adolescents are recognized and are addressed through multi-sectoral action. While many sectors have a role to play to address the key drivers of children's well-being, health and education, when working together, will have a powerful role. We believe, therefore, that one of the best buys is to invest in school health. WHO has built an alliance with UNESCO and other UN agencies for our new initiative called Making Every School a Health Promoting School, which is in fact building on over 25 years of experience of implementation of school health programs worldwide. In low-income countries, an estimated 500 million school days are lost to ill health each year. Only $2 billion are invested each year in addressing the health needs of school-aged children and adolescents, whereas some $210 billion are spent on educating this group in low and middle income countries. We invest in better teachers' training, in better school infrastructure and textbooks, and seem to forget that these investments might be lost if the center of those efforts, the learner, the children, are not well or healthy enough to actively participate in the learning process. Looking after the health and well-being of learners is therefore one of the most transformative and cost-effective ways to improve education outcomes and make education systems more inclusive and equitable. Realizing this potential will require a shift in thinking about the role of schools that goes beyond just promoting academic outcomes, and to make the health and well-being of learners a core mission of education and the education system as well. This is one of the key messages of our new global guidance, the global standards and indicators for health promoting schools and their implementation guidance. We're working together with UNESCO, UNICEF, and other UN agencies towards supporting countries in building health promoting education systems, ones that have learners' well-being not as an afterthought or a time-bound project, but as a part of their core mission and responsibility. We appreciate that this event has a strong focus on linking education, learning skills, and universal health coverage. And we are looking forward to contribute to the program and to continue our engagement with the Women's Health and Education Center and other partners in promoting this agenda. Future healthcare workers need first to have been provided with quality education and good health, and I therefore appreciate this initiative. Thank you. So on behalf of our Deputy Director General. Thank you very much, Rita, and over to you.
Thank you. This friendship has just started. I'm sure. Thank you again. Okay, focus of these very talented speakers, doctors and scientists, is on refugee health. Dr. Roger Worthington is a consultant in ethics, medical education, and global health based in UK, and he's joining us from UK. Dr. Colleen Kraft is a pediatrician in California, professor of pediatrics at University of Southern California and Children's Hospital in LA, Los Angeles. She is 2018 past president of the American Academy of Pediatrics. Dr. Godzi Akran is a pediatrician at University of Health Sciences, Santakepe Training and Research Hospital in Istanbul, Turkey. And she is joining us from Turkey. Welcome, all of you. Go ahead, Roger.
Thank you, Rita. And thank you for the invitation to speak and to be part of this important event. And it was very interesting listening to you, Dr. Banerjee, and the context and making the connections between, making explicit the connections between health and education. And I will continue with that theme, although with a particular focus. Just pause to share my screen to open the slides. So this is the title for this next section. And we have a particular focus on Turkey. But there are three parts to this. And I'm delighted to be joined by two friends and colleagues, Gözde Erkan from Istanbul and Colin Kraft from Los Angeles. And we will do our presentations in that order. So I will start off by talking about a framework which I think might be useful in helping to promote global health education and with regard to meeting the needs, healthcare needs of refugees. And then Dr. Erkan will talk about what is happening on the ground in Turkey, a country which has a very high proportion of refugees in the community. And she has considerable practical experience with this group, and Professor Kraft, who has been working on refugee health for many years, and she is going to talk about some of the practical steps that can be taken and the policy implications that arise from that. So moving on, refugee health is a matter of growing concern, especially for women and children. The UN data suggests that overwhelming preponderance of refugees and displaced persons are made up of women and children. And in the case of the most recent exodus from Ukraine, then the percentage is even higher. And so these refugees, displaced persons, they come with them, they bring their healthcare needs with them, but they have additional needs as well, brought about by what they might have experienced at home before they were forced to move, and by psychological pressures, stresses, and so forth. So they've got physical, mental, and emotional needs. And the healthcare workforce needs to be able to try and address these. It is well known that there are international conventions embedded within the UN Convention, dating all the way back to 1951. But my point is that it is necessary but not sufficient to claim health as a human right for refugees, and that is an established fact, but it is not sufficient to ensure that those needs are met. To ensure that the needs are met, we need resources, but we also need training and education for the workforce. So I then move on to talk briefly about workforce planning, because in order to bring about change and improve the situation for refugees, political will and social commitment are absolutely essential. But that will only go so far in terms of meeting the healthcare needs. You need a well-trained workforce. And that also means that you need appropriate numbers. And there are a lot of gaps in the workforce all around the world. Dr. Erkan will talk more about some of these issues in Turkey. So we're talking about treating a vulnerable population, and healthcare professionals need the right skills. And so my belief is that, given what I've just said, is that refugee health should be, I think, a core component in global health education. And from the research that I have seen on this, and there have been some major reviews on global health education curricula, very few institutions, very few programs deal with this as a specific topic. And I think this is an omission. And so to try and help this, I want to talk about some of the practicalities. So education and training does not change the political realities that might have brought about the fact that the migrants have had to relocate, have had to move, been forced from their homes. But it can help the healthcare professionals to respond more effectively to their healthcare needs and therefore to relieve human suffering. And so as an educator myself, I thought, well, what could possibly help to fill this gap? And so I've devised a set of 12 learning outcomes. And I'm going to run through these briefly because I have presented these before at several events, and I published them a couple of years ago, and they seem to have been well received. But the next step would be to start to integrate them into global health training programs. So the first thing is that it is essential for the healthcare professional to understand the public health risks associated with treating refugees. And Dr. Banerjee, you'll be well aware of these, but there's increased risk from infectious disease, partly from exposure to other pathogens, partly from not being vaccinated against common things which would normally be against which children would normally be vaccinated. But there are specific public health risks associated with migration. Sometimes it's living in really poor conditions. So the second point is about demonstrating awareness of the type and scope of the problems encountered by refugees, and most importantly, be willing to advocate on their behalf, because as a healthcare professional, you may be the one person that they can trust because you're not necessarily part of the government or part of the authorities, and you may be able to help them in practical ways. You need to be able to have the practical skills, the relevant skills for treating problems associated with migration. And that means that you have to work with whatever resources are available. Now, in the field where refugees are living in temporary accommodation, in camps, the resources may be extremely limited. In other situations where refugees are integrated into the community, they may be slightly better, but there will be constraints, maybe financial, maybe in terms of the workforce, it may be availability of medicines, all kinds of things. So there are compromises to be made. Healthcare professionals can certainly demonstrate leadership, and in trying to affect change and address the health problems experienced by refugees, then why not step up and assume that leadership role as a practicing professional? You can be in a unique position to make a difference. You also need to have some resilience because it is not easy if you really devote yourself to working with this group. And it's not only refugees that can experience stigma and political pressure. This is a complex issue and I don't want to spend time on it now, but I think you need to be sort of aware of some of the issues around working with refugees. And then moving on quickly, mindfulness of the links between mental and physical health. These two things are so intimately connected, and sometimes it is easy to overlook these close connections. And if somebody is suffering acute physical health problems, they're almost bound to be suffering from mental health conditions, and the opposite, particularly for those who have had to flee their home. Even if you're not an expert, you will know more than somebody else perhaps in your working group. So as a healthcare professional, teach global health skills to encourage other professionals, people who have less experience than you do. And consider the relevance of refugee health in urban primary care. In other words, it's easy to have an image of masses of tents, UNHCR, camps, for instance, with thousands and thousands of refugees, but a lot of refugees become integrated into the community. And Dr. Erkan will talk about that because that is the case for a lot of refugees in Turkey. So you need to address both circumstances, both sets of refugees. You need to be aware of vulnerabilities within refugee communities and to know what actions are appropriate. You need to be able to deal with medical emergencies that might be encountered, which could be very wide-ranging. And if nothing else, it may be just pointing them in the right direction and telling them where to go for their acute needs. Number 11, I want to stress, because language is a common barrier to accessing healthcare. And it has fundamental importance in relation to the rights of patients, this right to health that we've been talking about. Because if you do not have a common language, then delivering healthcare is difficult. And even if you've got a healthcare professional, and if you can't communicate with the patient, it's difficult to take the history, and you certainly can't deal with things like consent. And there's cultural competency issues that need to be addressed. And then my last point, I'll be brief on, you need to be sensitive towards the social customs that come with the refugees. They may well come from a different cultural background to yourself, as well as having different languages. But that does not necessarily mean that you automatically have to adopt or practice these social customs. It may be that they're asking you to do something that is unlawful or unethical according to your professional codes. And it's the codes of ethics that are binding on you that have to apply. So there can be tension there, and I think it's just, my point is simply to highlight that. And in relation to sustainable development, I think this is, obviously this is the central context for today. A lot of my own research now is around sustainable development. I joined the SDG Publishers Compact as a research fellow at the end of last year. And so I'm doing increasing amounts of work on this. And this talk relates to the 5 goals that I've listed. And I'm going to pause there and move straight on to the next speaker. And Goetze, I would like to give the floor to you, and I will scroll down for you. But we welcome your input, and it'd be really interesting to hear about your experiences of treating refugees in Turkey. So over to you, please.
Thanks, Roger. It's an honor and pleasure for me to attend this great event. I'm a general pediatrician from Istanbul, Turkey. And today I'm going to talk about the healthcare of refugees in Turkey. I would like to start with this word. Anyone can become a refugee in one day. Next. No one becomes a refugee by choice, but the rest of us can have a choice about how we help them. Next. As you are well aware, Turkey has the world's largest refugee population with a 3.7 million Syrians under temporary protection and more than 300,000 refugees and asylum seekers under international protection. Next. These asylum seekers are mainly from Iraq, Afghanistan, Iran, except then Syrian. Following the onset of Syria crisis and the influx of Syrian refugees into the Turkey, firstly, camps or temporary accommodation centers were established to host the refugees population. The government of Turkey's refugee response generously and positively with the UNHCR. Over the 98% of refugees live across all Turkey's provinces. And now, less than 2% has hosted in temporary accommodation centers. These temporary accommodation centers number was 23 in 2016, but the number decreased to 7 with the aim of integration of refugees to the society. In here, you could see an example of refugee centers on the right side. Depend on the UNICEF Turkey report, approximately 1.8 million refugees is children. It is importantly makes it 50% of all refugees are children. Next. Due to open door policy in Turkey in 2011, and the Syrian refugees number has increased in Turkey, and Turkey has required to develop the immigration and immigrant health policies for refugees. Since April 2011, all the Syrians who have been registered in Turkey with temporary identification numbers can benefit from the same level of primary and secondary health services as Turkish citizens. Non-registered Syrians in Turkey are also able to receive emergency care with free of charge. To reduce the workload of primary healthcare services, migrant health centers have been established in many cities, and now 185 migrant health centers are available in Turkey. In these units, provide primary diagnosis and treatment, screening tests, vaccinations, healthcare services for targeting women, children, and reproductive health services, mental health services, and many preventive services. How the process works in Turkey. The refugee can receive health services in the province they have been registered. If treatment is not available there, a referral to the most appropriate health facility is possible. Emergency ambulance services are also available for refugees, and they can get free or reduced price medication from pharmacies. And also in 2017, Sıhhat project was established in Turkey with the aim of improving the health status of Syrian refugees. And during the COVID-19 pandemic, all refugees are included in the national COVID-19 prevention and vaccination plan. So you could see in here the numbers of healthcare services provided to the Syrian population. Approximately 97 million outpatient services, 3 million inpatient services, 2.6 million operations have been provided to the Syrian refugees up to date. More than 700,000 Syrian babies were born in our healthcare facilities, and more than 4 million vaccinations were administered to the refugees. Turkey had provided the same healthcare services to Syrian refugees without any discrimination. Also for refugees advocates, Refugee Rights Turkey, as an independent non-governmental organization, provides free legal information and assistance services to asylum seekers and refugees. Refugees have the right to be informed their health status and possible treatments. They can consent or refuse the treatment. They can make a complaint for any physical or psychological damage. It is also possible to voice their concerns or grievances through the call center of Ministry of Health. Next. Since 2014, in order to seek solutions to problems of refugee population and to ensure their rapid adaptation to the society, many different projects have been conducted with success by the Refugee Association. These projects are mostly targeted on women and children education and the language barriers. Next. Despite the Turkish government has employed translators at every step of healthcare facilities, the language barrier is still a huge challenge for refugees. Also, lack of qualified professionals who experience in refugee health and ethics, and lack of rehabilitation services is another problem. And due to low educational and occupational status of the women refugees are more vulnerable groups in Turkey. And they feel dependency to their husband or another person because of the low education and language. And by this way, we could see more increased risk of obstetric outcomes such as preterm delivery or low birth weight. The Turkish government is creating more comprehensive healthcare services to refugees, but the movement of Syrian refugees from one province to another province and undocumented immigrants is creating another problem because it is difficult to control and monitor their health. And in my hospital, we conducted a study about the healthcare of refugee children. The result is still in process, but we observed higher rates in delivery other than the other healthcare services. Every 1 or 2 women in 10 is refugee. So it is really important because their population also is getting increased. And next. In conclusion, since the women are the main caregivers for children and elderly people, to focus on women's education to improve their behaviors is crucial. Additionally, cooperation between non-governmental organizations and volunteers should be more established. Improving language skills and more efficient management of the translator recruitment for knowing sociological, cultural, and health terminology will improve the language barriers. For undocumented immigrants, advocacy for policy change included a range of possible legislation to allow full or varying levels of access to healthcare. That might reduce the movement of refugees between the cities, and it will improve their healthcare. And lastly, I believe together we can achieve anything. Thank you for your collaboration and everyone to join and listen us.
Thank you very much for that, Gracia. That was just wonderful. You provide us with so much useful and just invaluable information. Let's move on now. And Colleen, I can't see you, but I hope you're still there.
I'm here. Okay.
Okay, over to you.
All right. So I'm going to focus on the United States-Mexico border and update on what's happening with the kids there, really to illustrate what we need to be doing in terms of policy and in terms of advocacy and in terms of messaging. So you can move on to the next slide there. Some of the topics that I'll be talking about, first of all, what is the journey between Central America and the United States? And then the whole concept of post-migration trauma. So what's happened in the United States between separation of parents and children at the border. And then most recently, something called the Migrant Protection Protocol, which is really very poorly named. It is better called the Remain in Mexico policy, where families are coming and claiming asylum and are being sent back into Mexico to wait in very, very dangerous camp situations. And because of that, what's happening is that parents are sending their children across the border, and they're sending kids as young as age 2, along with other family members who are children, because children have protections in the United States that adults do not have. And they are taking advantage of that. But what's happening is that these kids are coming in and they really are going into an incarceration model without their parents. So we'll talk about unaccompanied children and the Office of Refugee Resettlement Shelters. The Flores Settlement Agreement is something that is policy that really protects children and is why we're having so many unaccompanied minors, and how that relates to forming policy and then looking at our best practices moving forward. So a little bit about pre and post-migration trauma. Understanding that in Central America, what we're finding is that families are being targeted by gangs and by police and by others where there really are no laws. And because of that, the kids are being recruited into gangs. The young women are being recruited into gang girlfriends. And if families don't comply with that, they may wake up and find that their neighbor has died or somebody else has been killed by some of the gangs. And this is why people are leaving. It's the violence and fear that's driving that migration. So as we go on to the next slide, what's happening is you can see at the bottom of the slide, the 3 countries that represent the northern triangle of Central America, so Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. And people are leaving and migrating up through Mexico. Many of these people who are coming with the assistance of what's called a coyote, which is somebody who's paid an exorbitant amount of money to bring you there. And what's important about that is that the poorest of the poor in these countries can't afford to leave. So these tend to be more middle-class citizens who are coming up through Mexico and into the United States. Really interesting in contrast to what Gazde had talked about. In the United States, there is not a national policy in terms of providing healthcare to immigrants and refugees. It's very state-based. So if a family comes through Texas, there are no services that are afforded to them. If they come through California, they all get health insurance. So it's very much a state-based system. Next slide. The Remain in Mexico program, again, it is harming children in that it has de facto resulted in separation of parents and kids. Back in 2018, when I was president of the American Academy of Pediatrics, that was during the Trump zero tolerance policy, where families were showing up at the border and the kids were being taken away from them. And there was a great deal of outrage and advocacy within the United States that stopped that practice. But now that parents and families are being sent back to Mexico, and they're so dangerous there, the families are sending their kids across the border, and it is resulting in a de facto separation of parents and children. Next slide. So with the unaccompanied children, we started with a large influx of these kids in 2014, and the estimations are at least 200,000 at this point journeying into the United States on their own. And the challenge has been, how do we provide adequate shelter and basic services for these kids? Where the kids go, this is really important as well too. If you look at a lot of the images from the United States and understanding who goes where and why it is that children are protected. So there are two groups that are responsible for housing of immigrants. One of them is the Department of Homeland Security and the U.S. Border Customs and Border Protection. And they run what we've known as the cages, the Customs and Border Protection facilities. These are horrible places. These are where people are in facilities where lights are on 24/7. There's inadequate food and water and blankets, and we've really spoken out against them. Unfortunately, kids still go there. The U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement run the detention centers, and we have had 3 family detention centers in the United States. Mostly what was happening is that the adults were going to the detention centers and children were being transferred over to a much more humane area that was run by the Department of Health and Human Services. And these are the Office of Refugee Resettlement shelters. Next slide. These are some pictures of the shelters. They are large shelters. Part of the problem and the issue with the shelters is this, is that 90% of the kids who come to the United States have family who live in the United States. Sometimes these are parents, sometimes they're aunts and uncles, sometimes they're grandparents, sometimes they're brothers or sisters. And much of our advocacy has been, why do we have to house these kids in an incarceration setting when we could actually transfer them to family who will take care of them? And this has been a big area that we have discussed here. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Flora Settlement Agreement in terms of how do we mold what's happening into the policy that's already been adjudicated in the United States. So for children, the Flora Settlement Agreement happened as a lawsuit between an unaccompanied minor child and the United States when they wanted to deport the child or keep them in a situation that was really very substandard. And the Flora Settlement Agreement, which is still being followed for the most part for children under age 18, is that there has to be proper physical care and maintenance. There has to be appropriate routine medical and dental care, that each child has an individualized need assessment, and that they can only stay at a max 20 days in the custody of one of these large shelters, that there have to be educational services appropriate to that child's level of development. And in addition, recreation and leisure activities. This got very contentious during the Trump administration because the administrators wanted to cut out things like soccer and leisure activities and other things that are really developmentally appropriate for children. But Flores essentially says a minimum of 1 hour a day of outdoor activities, 1 hour of structured leisure time. And this is not watching screens or TV. This is actually structured leisure time where there's some play. There's a minimum of 1 counseling session per week by a trained mental health professional and a minimum of 2 weekly group counseling sessions. Some of the health services that are provided to children who are in the Office of Refugee Resettlement custody include that initial medical exam that has to be conducted within 2 business days of getting into the shelter. So vital signs, history, physical exam. The labs that we look at are TB testing for everybody, chest x-ray if they're greater than 15 years of age, and then evaluations if there is fever or cough, including COVID. HIV if they're greater than 13 years of age. We sadly have to do pregnancy testing on young women greater than 10 years of age because there is a lot of history of sexual assault on the way up to the United States. And then hepatitis B and other sexually transmitted infections, and hepatitis B if there's some IV drug use. We use at vaccinations. Often children are treated with ivermectin for scabies and some other skin diseases. And then there's follow-up and really screening to see who needs to actually go on to further care. One of the good things about the Office of Refugee Resettlement is that we actually do have an advocate in ORR who is a pediatrician who has been able to keep health insurance available for children coming to the border who have been identified as having something like renal failure or diabetes or something that was not identified in their home country. And we've been able to keep insurance for those kids so that they can be transferred to a local children's hospital for care of somebody who is more medically complex. There also has to be a psychological assessment in 48 hours. And many of the shelters in California are hiring not only mental health folks to be on the ground, but also caring adults who serve as parents because the parents were left behind in Mexico. Next slide. So knowing this, how do we really focus on children and families and bring together our medical education, that high quality, accessible healthcare, our community engagement, and our messaging for legislative policy and advocacy and research in public health? And the messaging that our advocates for our immigrant and refugee kids and families have been talked about have been shared prosperity. We all were refugees to the United States and immigrants to the United States. And to give people a chance who want a chance to work really only adds to the diversity and the prosperity of the entire country. And a little bit of investment up front can lead to a lot of return later on. So the message of shared prosperity is really very important. The messages of human potential and human dignity are just as important. If you look historically at that first generation of immigrants to the United States, regardless of whether you came from Europe or Asia or Latin America, that first group were hard workers, and usually their children were much higher achievers. And so how do we continue to do that and increase the human potential along with the human dignity and reframe the idea that immigrants are felons to immigrants add to our country, add to our nation, add to our culture? Next slide. So some of the best practices and recommendations moving forward as we put together that advocacy message of shared prosperity, we would like to avoid an incarceration model. And sadly, even children coming by themselves as young as age 2 are put into these Office of Refugee Resettlement shelters, which is an incarceration model. It's keeping you together. It is not sending you to a community where you already have family to seek asylum and wait for your asylum hearing. The second thing, which is so important, is allowing families to arrive together to seek asylum. We need to make it so that we don't have to force families to send their children across the border by themselves. And that's what we're doing now with the whole Migrant Protection Protocol, Remain in Mexico policy. If families can't travel together, ensuring that caring adults are available for children. This is happening in California in the shelters. I don't think it's happening in Texas in the shelters because there's a very different view of immigrants in those two states, but that is one of the best practices in policy. Ensuring that trauma-informed care is incorporated in everything from the built environment of the shelter to interactions between children with adults and with peers. Next slide. One of the best practices is really, again, avoiding incarceration and finding a community site for housing and education. One of the great practices that happened during the Obama administration that was actually ended during the Trump administration was the whole idea of family court and family protection. What would happen is families would move to a community where they had family, and they would be in touch with a judge to keep track of them for their asylum hearing. That really avoided incarceration. It was a much more holistic and community-based and dignity and human potential type of a way to do this. We would advocate for that again. Assessing for work background and skills to put into refugee camps and community-based sites. So many of the folks coming to the United States, again, these are not the poorest of the poor because they can't afford to make the journey. These are accountants and nurses and teachers. What if we assess for their work background and skills and have them be able to be hired, to be used to care for others within that situation or other places? That would, again, only improve the human potential and the human dignity. And then the last thing is co-locating legal and mental health services. There are many sites around the United States, including Texas and some of the less progressive states, where there are co-located mental health and legal services for our families. And this is really important because we need to be able to have all of these things addressed in conjunction with healthcare. And I'm just going to end with a final slide here. It's just a letter that I got in 2018 from a 5th grader that really voices this well. It said, "Dear President of the American Academy of Pediatrics, I think the world really needs you, especially the children. They've done nothing wrong and they're practically in jail because they're immigrants. It doesn't mean that they should be treated differently. Gandhi changed the world with kindness. I thank you for all of what you do and be the change you want to see in the world. Thank you."
Well, Colleen, thank you so much. That's a wonderful way to finish. And your presentation was packed full of information and a lot of food for thought. So thank you both for joining me and putting together this collection of slides. So I think before I overrun my time, I will hand it back to Rita. And
Thank you. Thank you, Roger. Thank you, Colin. And I see Dave here is Dave, and he has joined us. Good to see you, Dave. And I think somehow Upasana got locked out. I don't know how she did it, but yeah, she's coming back. Anyway, thank you, Upasana. Okay, now we have Women's Health and Education Centers, NGO representatives at UNR presenting their thoughts, their projects, and their grassroots level organizations mostly are based in rural India. Their focus of work is ending child marriages and educating our boys and girls. Upasana, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Hang on. I had
And
some
good.
issue with my laptop last minute, of course. So I'm not sure if I'll be able to join, but I've quickly joined through my phone. I'm really sorry, everybody. I'm gonna share, flip my camera and show you the screen. I'm really sorry for the trouble. It was just last minute thing I didn't expect. Anyways, so hang on. Let me quickly. Sure. Let me know if you guys can see my screen. It's going to be, oh my God. I'm not even able to share my, hang on, wait, let me do it this way. If you guys, now can you guys see my screen? I'm sorry, this is really horrible.
No.
Okay, Rita, let's
Just
do
read
it
it,
this
just
way.
read.
Yes, let's do it this way. We have Upoma Ahmed from Bangladesh. She also has prepared a presentation. She's currently doing a master's in Harvard. She is founder of the organization Evolution 360 in Bangladesh, and she has worked on several projects with young girls and women in Bangladesh. So while I figure this out, let's hear it from Upoma. Upoma, can you please take the floor?
Sure. Thank you, Upasana Didi. So good evening, everyone from Bangladesh. I'm currently located in Bangladesh and it's quite late night over here. However, I'm really glad to meet you all and to be here in this high-level panel dialogue. And thank you so much, Rita, for the cordial invitation. So I'll just go very quickly while Upasana Didi fixes her laptop. I'll just talk about my organization. I've been working as a youth activist since 2016, from the time I started working with UN Women Headquarters as a volunteer. I founded my own organization with with 10 people actually, but now it's a big family of 500 change makers. So we do a lot of works, basically focusing on SDG 5. However, I'll be sharing a very short presentation, just highlighting the activities that we do on women and children and regarding education and their health. So I'm just sharing a short PPT with your permission. I hope it's visible.
Yes.
Okay. So thank you so much. Evolution 360 is an organization founded in 2016. We basically focus on SDG 5, and we have a team of 500 change makers working all over the country in Bangladesh. And we also have some international ambassadors working from different countries who are advocating online. So the first thing is we sponsor the education of some female children, and mostly the victims of child marriage and domestic violence, especially the children, the females who have dropped out of school, and also the grassroots children who cannot afford to have a proper education. So we have a special project through which we sponsor the education of the children. And okay, so the second activity I'd like to highlight is basically the Good Touch Bad Touch campaign, which we carry out in the rural areas of Bangladesh, the grassroots level. And we've already covered more than 60 areas in our country. And this is still continuing. This project is still ongoing. And the third thing is sanitary pad distribution. That is something we do to ensure the menstrual hygiene of the underprivileged women. So as you all may know, that Bangladesh is currently facing a very horrible flood in the Sylhet region, and this is the most dangerous and the most impactful flood that our country has experienced over the years. And it's still ongoing. We are still crowdfunding and donating sanitary pads to the flood affected people, and along with the grocery items and food, because most organizations only donate food. However, we tend to forget the necessity of ensuring the menstrual hygiene of the females amidst this crisis. So we've taken this initiative, and our wing ambassador from Sylhet region, as you can see in the picture, she's doing that with her team. And about the fourth activity, it's the winter clothes and blanket distribution in the rural areas of Bangladesh, a project that we do every year during winter to the underprivileged people who cannot afford to have winter clothes. So we donate winter clothes and blankets to them. And Evolution 360 is actively working against gender-based violence since 2016 through multiple projects. This is just a picture of one of our conversation cafes. However, we have multiple projects against gender-based violence. Even we also worked as an ally of WEP in the We Commit campaign, which was launched in 2020 amidst pandemic. We worked at combating the gender-based violence in the corporate world, executing the campaign with UN Women. And as a part of this campaign, we had more than 30 corporate professionals and CEOs from different companies of our country who discussed the HR policies and their roles in impacting or influencing the lives of women, and to make the lives of women more safe at the workplace. We also hosted the biggest cycle rally against gender-based violence last year. And here are some pictures for that. This was an awareness campaign to raise awareness against the GBV. This is something that we did on occasion of 16 days of activism. And we also have been providing self-defense training of the rural girls of Bangladesh, going to different schools and different places all over the country. As you can see some pictures here. We've been continuing this since 2017. And we are also replicating the He for She campaign in the grassroots area, especially with the boys, teaching them consent, attitude towards opposite gender, and the true meaning of feminism. Something which is very important in context of Asia and especially Bangladesh. And we also have conducted adolescent hygiene training with Zyka in 3 villages in 2020. In 3 villages of Sylhet region, Chunarghat Upazila with the UNO of the region, and around 250 girls participated in the training that year. So this is just a small highlight. I hope I was able to make you understand or give at least a glimpse of what we do. And this is how our team is moving forward with a goal to create a gender equal world, bringing a gender equity. And we look forward to doing more amazing projects in future. And we are really honored and glad to have Upasana Chauhan as our international moderator with us since the inception of our organization. So thank you so much. And please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you for your precious time.
I think Upasana just texted me. Her laptop has started to work. Very good. And you are a tech expert.
I cannot believe
Okay.
why. I'm sorry. I think it's just a part of
technology. I'm sorry, without wasting any minute, I'm going to just quickly share
Okay.
my screen. I hope my my presentation is worth the wait and worth the chaos.
Oh, yeah, you fixed it. You fixed it.
Yes, can you guys see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, so hello everybody. My name is Upasna. I'm from India. I've been I've been in US since 2014. When I was in India, when I was 20 years old, I started my own nonprofit because I really wanted to bridge the gap that young girls and women are facing around at least around my small town and my place where I belong to. So now currently I'm working with the readers organization WHEC, as well as I'm working with Man Up campaign as an organization based out of New York, and I work with UPOMA in Bangladesh and several other organizations in India. So basically from an overview, I work with UN agencies, UN Women, as well as other UN agencies in New York, and also a grassroots in India as well. So I try to work as a bridge between the two. So this is my experience and what the efforts that we are trying to improve access to education for girls and women in India. We need to understand first that we need to identify the regional issues first. We need to understand that one policy does not work for all. Therefore, it's very important to first identify the regional root causes and work on the policies accordingly. And in order to identify the regional issues, the government needs to work with the regional community leaders, which includes youth and women. There are several factors to be considered while drafting the policies for young girls and women's education, especially in India. So during CSW every year in March in UN headquarters here in New York, we work with the youth who travels from around the world to formulate the youth CSW policy document, which is then submitted to the SD and then it's distributed to the member states to be implemented. The youth CSW policy document is completely made by youth only and for youth only. But there is a major gap here in drafting these policies and actually implementing the same, as we have already understood from from your own experiences as well, that we do draft the policies in all these big conferences that happens around the world throughout the year, and we send them across to the member states as well, but do we actually implement them? That is a bigger question. And that's where we work with the member states as well after it's implemented, after it's drafted, so that we can help them in implementation as well. But in total honesty, that's a big gap and it really doesn't happen. When we talk about out of school children, then we need to understand that there are several factors that go into it, which is social factors, economic factors, spatial factors, gender discrimination. For example, we have caste and other forms of social discrimination. There's cultural hindrances, particularly for different tribes, religions, and language of instruction at school is different than the spoken at home. Especially this is a very Indian specific issue because India has so many languages. And disability is still a social taboo. Parents are not educated, especially mothers, and female work participation is not at all there. There are so many orphans as well who don't have any guide, early marriage of girls, and economic factors is poverty, child labor with or without payment. Child labor is a very heart-wrenching issue because so many times when we speak to the girls and their parents from these grassroots communities, we always get asked that, do you want us to send our daughters to school and not work? But if they don't work, then they do not get money. If they don't get money, they cannot get fed. So for us to make all these big fancy statements is a very different thing. But for the people who have to decide between meals and between sending their children to work is a very different battle altogether, which we have to help them to cross. And then there are spatial factors. For example, difference in the GDPs and state investments in education, village development variables, socio-political conflicts, and differences in state-wise definition. Why children are dropping out. So once we realize all these factors, then we can come back to gender discrimination, cultural values and attitude, and pro-male gender bias with household allocation of educational expenditure. That is, even all the most educated families are also in today's date are responsible for the same. So when we talk about out of school children, then we need to understand why do we not have access to school in their community? Why do not enroll despite availability of school? And who enroll but do not attend school, and who drop out of school? If you see this picture in the slide right now, this is a mode of commute for most of the women in one of the rural villages that I visited in Rajasthan. They do not even have a bus. They're just in the back of a truck, which is used to carry cows, actually, which is being used for women to go places. And so we need to understand that we need to increase awareness about free education programs as well. There are several government-run public free education programs, but there is a major awareness gap. Therefore, we run several programs with the grassroots organizations in India, where we reach out to the rural corners in India to spread awareness about such programs. However, government needs to collaborate with the grassroots organizations to spread awareness, which is completely lacking as of now. Government is not working with the grassroots organizations. So it's only on the shoulders of the grassroots organizations like ours that we need to spread the awareness about the programs that the government claims to run or implement. So we also work with the parents one-to-one to convince them to send the daughters to school instead of not marrying them as a child bride. It's a very hard choice, like I said, for the parents, as they cannot even afford to have meal. So sometimes we tell them, if you send them to school, then they will get free meal as a government school free meal program. So, and then they were like, okay, if they'll get food in school, then we might consider sending them. So the next important point is access to safe and free transportation to schools and colleges. From our grassroots door-to-door research, we found that one of the main reasons girls are not enrolled in school is unsafe public transport. They get raped, they get bullied, they get touched here and there. There's so many different challenges that the girls face on their journey to school. There have been so many cases that have been reported that the girls who missed their buses and they were walking to school, there were guys of that village who picked them up and raped them. And they told them that, how dare you go to school? So it's not Afghanistan, it's India we are talking about here. And we have to address such issues. Our girls dropout rate, initial enrollment percentage is very good. It's like 96% in some states. But then from grade 9 to 10, it completely drops to 77%, because by the time girls are already marriageable age as per the villages. And then in grade 11 or 12, it goes down to less than 50% of girls, because the girls are already now either marriageable age, so the parents don't want to risk the girls sending them to school, or they are married away already. So the above stats is further low in the rural corners of India, where girls have to travel 5 to 10 kilometers just to reach the bus stand. So it's not even the school that they will go. And how do they even reach bus stands is a very difficult task altogether. Sometimes the government will give them programs, like they will give them free bicycles so that the girls can go to school. But the parents will sell the bicycle so that they can get some money out of it to feed their families. So even though the government provides them with free resources, the families sometimes, they end up selling that government free resource instead of using it for the daughters, because they just cannot afford it. Then we need to understand the role of men in shaping the society. The solution lies within the problem. We need to bring men in these conversations about women's issues. Women talking about women's issue is an age-old problem. We will not go anywhere if we're just women talking about women's issues. So I'm really thankful to Roger and Anshu. And I saw there's another guy who also joined us as well in this event today. I'm really glad we have more men talking about all these conversations, understanding women's and girls' issues as well, and standing up for them. And in our organization, Man Up campaign, we work with young boys to old men on several grassroots projects around the world, which are led by youth. So young people identify the corresponding community issues, and then they work to resolve them by creative, engaging projects. So not just grassroots, it's not just on the shoulders of grassroots organization, but Fortune 500 organizations and all UN agencies also need to ensure that women are included in the senior management roles in decision-making as well. If we can have women making policies about women, we might not end up in the policies like end abortion, which we just recently saw. It's not only about US, but every country in the world. Women are not on the decision-making tables. about women's bodies or about women. It's a very big thing, and I don't know why in 2022 we still have this problem. The men in the picture shown, they just play cards all day under the tree while women work in the field, and this they go home and then they decide the future of that earn money, and the women in the house as well. They basically take the crops that the women work in the field, and then they go to the city to sell the money, to sell the crops. Then they have the money, they drink, they just spend that money in drinking. They don't even give back the money to the women or anybody in the house for that matter. The next important point is the importance of role models from a very early age. We need to understand that the difference between girls and boys is not when they are 20 or 30 or further. It's really as low as age 5. And if you see all the stats, then you can find out that at the age of 5, girls view themselves as good as boys, but by age 6, the shift starts to begin. And they already start perceiving that, no, these are boys, we are girls. And they already think we are less smart, boys are more smart. And this is across the globe. So even nothing to do with the country or anything. So when I asked about these girls that what do they want to be when they grow up, their answer was a teacher. Of course, their answer will be a teacher because all that they have seen in their environment and life is a teacher. So their role model will be a teacher. They don't even know they can be something beyond it. And we run programs with the young girls in schools, and we take online classes, Zoom sessions to talk to girls about all the different options that they have in future so that they can grow beyond their environment. They get exposed to beyond their environment. In US or in other developed countries, the kids do get exposed to different career options in future, but we are talking about developing countries, and we're also talking about the rural communities. Their girls there need most help, and they don't know. So we bridge this gap thanks to technology, and we try to have Zoom sessions with the girls there. And fifth point is, why do we think that laws to protect women and girls the laws itself are unprotected? We create all the laws, especially from experience again from India. We have so many laws to curb child marriage, to make sure that the government have basically implemented a lot of laws, like for example, when the wedding card is printed, the girls and the guys' age should be printed on the card. But is anybody verifying that the age printed on the card is actually the age of the bride and the groom? Nobody is verifying the same. So half implemented laws, people will always find loopholes around it. So we need to address the gray area of society, politics, and government. HLPF should be used to hold the countries accountable for the policies that they promise they will be implemented. More speaking spaces and opportunities should be given to the civil society in such platforms who can show the ground realities of the government. In all the VNR reviews during the HLPF, the countries talk about, we have implemented this, we have implemented that, but have they actually implemented it? It's just the numbers that they talk, that they have created these laws in place, but implementation is a different ball game altogether, and nobody discusses about it. So implementation, it's really just about that. The governments are only focusing on making the laws on papers, but such less focus on actually implementing the same on ground. Now, what is the role of government, societies, UN and civil societies? If you see, the global gender gap is not expected to close for another 136 years. I'm sure everybody might know about this number right now. And the COVID-19 pandemic has increased this time from 100 years, according to the World Economic Forum's Global Gender Gap Report. So UN and member states need to burst their illusion bubble about the role of civil society and need to engage with them more often than currently. In all the global conferences, we really need to, if we really need to know the truth, we must provide an equal opportunity to the civil society as well, who are the front leaders working in the grassroots. As you might know, the civil society just get one statement that, oh, so many of the civil societies needs to submit, and then they just pick like few of them, and that too, there is internal politics about the same as well. So civil society is not even getting enough spaces to share the grassroots experiences, and the countries are, of course, if you have been around with HLPF and these conferences for a long time, you would know that countries will not even let the civil society people from their country speak about these issues in these conferences. So as we can clearly see that women's rights are not progressing any further, but still we are going back to 1950s. So the only burning solution at this stage is collaborative implementation. We all need to work together as one force against this gender gap, if not for us, but for our children and future generations. We work with UN agencies and governments and civil societies as well as to be able to bridge the gap and ensure we are really leaving no one behind. But there's no formulated existing process that currently exists to implement this bridge between the governments, UN, and civil society as a end-to-end process from making the policies to implementing the policies. So each and every one is a strong pillar, but struggling on its own without the bridge. So we work on building the bridge between the three. So my question to you all is, are you with the girls who are waiting for people like you and me to help them? If yes, then please, I really, really, really beg you on behalf of all these girls to please let's work together as one team. Even though we are separate entities, we can do it. And I really mean every word of it, because when I talk to those girls, it's really like you will not be able to sleep in the night. We have to take this very seriously. Let's ensure that the future of the granddaughter is not like her grandmother. We have the power to change generations. Please, let's just use it together to do it. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Upasana. It was very inspiring, and WHEC is honored to have you at UN as its main representatives. Keep on doing, and Anshu Banerjee from WHO will help you out.
I really hope so. I really feel this gap. It really boils my blood every time. We talk about all these countries will come to HLPF and talk about all these things, the laws, but there is no implementation I see at the grassroots. I am just like, I really would love Anshu or anybody, all of you. We should just drop our whatever bubbles we have, and we should just work together to actually bridge the gap. And we have the power to do it. Why not do it? Just do it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank
No
you.
problem.
And get your slides out. Thank you very much. And last but not least is the Donna, my lovely friend from Springfield, Massachusetts. And she's been teacher in the Springfield systems for 30 years. Donna, take it. I know we are running out of time, so make it short and sweet. Yeah.
I surely will, Rita. A warm welcome to everyone who's attending today's event. We are hoping you're finding our speakers informative and our topics inspiring. I agree wholeheartedly with Dr. Luthra and with Upasana that the Women's Health and Education Center has a unique role to play in strengthening educational systems around the world. Mobile education, the use of mobile and wireless communication is the perfect tool to make this happen. We must turn ideas into action plans, and technology is our tool. Ambassador Mark G. Hambley, former U.S. Special Representative to the UN Commission on Sustainable Development, shares the following thought. In areas where schooling has been disrupted by fighting, drought, or disease, where schools have been attacked or closed, or as happened in Iraq and Mali, where entire university libraries and invaluable research materials were looted or burned, access to the web made a truly dire situation moderately manageable with both teachers and students alike, able to access materials, enabling them to continue their studies. Mayor Dominic Sarno of the City of Springfield adds, technology can be a great resource to our children, but it must be coupled with social interactions and compassion. This connecting of the dots creates a full positive effect and well-rounded individuals. Police Commissioner Cheryl Clapprood of the City of Springfield adds to this picture. Today's youth have been raised in difficult, often challenging situations, having to count on school friends for support and learning how to cope with life through video games. She says it's sad to see young people turn to gangs for support. With COVID, it's even more difficult for them to get the support they need from those who actually have their best interest at heart. Commissioner Clapprood has identified many of the difficulties facing our school-aged children and gives a clearer picture of what some of the stumbling blocks are and identified a serious roadblock. How can children identify those people who have their best interest at heart? Trained and educated teachers are one group who can be counted on. The conclusion to be drawn from all these intelligent, educated, and high savvy contributors to this conversation: quality education delivered by competent, caring, tech-savvy, professionally licensed teachers, not just technicians. Technicians can deliver the curriculum, but not care about the curriculum of the children they deliver it to. The strategy that makes the most sense is one shared by my esteemed colleague, Rick Bontempo, who told of his experience teaching in Florida from 1985 to 1997, where the state of Florida paid for him to earn a graduate degree in education so that he would be an even more educated and experienced educator for their students. Expensive? Yes, but ever so worth it to have role models delivering tech-savvy education to our young people. Thank you for your attention.
Well, Dr. Banerjee, you have the last word and the last sentence, and then I will stop recording. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for this very rich discussion. I just wanted to say something about the first few presentations around refugees, etc. And it's very well known that the host community normally provides the first level of support and response to emergencies, whether it's internally displacement or whether it's cross-border, and so for refugees. And so I think it's very important issue on how to address that and how to bring or build capacity of host communities to deliver this. And so, as Götze mentioned, many countries have policies to support that. We've also seen that recently with the Ukraine crisis, where most of the people are hosted by or accommodated by the host community, and services are provided through national or integrated into the national services. So that's really an important area to pay attention to. And Upasana, we will definitely come back to you to follow up on your work. Just to say that the Partnership for Maternal Newborn and Child Health is organizing a global forum for adolescents in October 2023. And I think the issues you highlighted around the CSW youth policy document, etc., are things that we can look at, see how we can integrate that in the preparation for that event.
That would be very nice, Dr. Anshu. I will get in touch with you. This would be really great. You know, we need to bridge this gap, you know, because you would understand there's no point on these million conferences we have unless we are actually implementing them, you know. So yeah. Thank you so much. That would be really appreciated.
Well, thank you, everybody. It was indeed my pleasure to meet you all. Thank you
so much, Rita, for hosting this wonderful event and getting all of us together under one roof.